Today I will be ranking every single book that I read in this past month in February, and I will also talk about a few books that I'm currently reading at the moment. So I'm going to start right ahead with our ranking. The greatest book that I read this month is Falling Flat by Dr. Danny R. Faulkner. So this is a book all about the flat earth conspiracy theory. In the introduction, it says that this book is written for those who want to have something to say when they start debating with flat earthers, because he says in the book, "I doubt that flat earthers' minds will ever be changed no matter what," which is so true. So yeah, this book was so interesting. This book has everything in it. It has all this information about like eclipses, physics, history, astronomy. It has like the history of the cosmology of the Earth and what all these different cultures thought about the Earth and its cosmology and shape and all this. And it's so fascinating. And there's also a few chapters devoted to talking about the Bible, because there are a lot of Christian flat earthers who claim that the Bible teaches the Earth is flat, and so he looks through all the verses in the Bible that flat earthers point to supposedly say that the Earth is flat. And I think like every flat earther needs to read this book, because I don't know how anyone would be able to say the Earth is flat after reading this. But of course, like Danny Faulkner said, I doubt flat earthers' minds are ever going to be changed no matter what. I'm absolutely certain that if you took a flat earther into space and showed them the round Earth, they would probably say it was like a hologram or something. I loved reading this book, and even if you're not interested in the topic, there's just so much that you can learn from it. There's so much about history, geography, astronomy, physics, and everything. That's just so fascinating, and I really enjoyed every second that I read out of this book. I would highly recommend it to anyone, even if you're not interested in the flat earth conspiracy theory. Read this book. It's so good. There's so much in it. Excellently well written, and it's 10 out of 10 for me. The next one that I read, and here, I just have it in this, The Complete Sherlock Holmes Volume 1, which is like pretty thick, and it's got a whole bunch of the Sherlock Holmes novels and short stories inside it. So I read A Study in Scarlet, which takes up this much of the book, as you can see there. So I read A Study in Scarlet, which was the first Sherlock Holmes novel that was ever published. And it was so good. It was better than all the short stories. It was just so fascinating how Sherlock Holmes discovers the case. So they find a guy who was murdered in his apartment. It's incredible. I love the process of how Sherlock Holmes slowly uncovers the crime. And the explanation behind it was easily like the most fascinating part of the book. Basically, about half of the novel was just a flashback to the murderer and his backstory and why he decided to murder this man. And that part was so fascinating. Also, when they caught the murderer, what he said. The prose is so good. I think that Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, the author of Sherlock Holmes, is most strong in dialogue. That was probably the best part of this book, was actually the dialogue. And he's just so creative with the way he sets up these mysteries and writes about how they are solved. It's so creative, so fascinating, so unique. And A Study in Scarlet is going to get 10 out of 10 as well. I really enjoyed it. And I highly recommend Sherlock Holmes to anyone. They are such great mysteries. And I haven't read very many mystery books. I probably should, because all of the mysteries that I have read, I've absolutely loved. Sherlock Holmes especially. And A Study in Scarlet is definitely 10 out of 10. The next one I read is this book, which I did a review of just a week ago, so you can see that review if you're interested in hearing my full thoughts on it. It is The Holy War by John Bunyan. This is basically an allegory for the spiritual warfare that's constantly going on inside us, with Satan, his demons, and with God and his angels. This book was great as well. John Bunyan is an amazing writer of prose. He is most famous for The Pilgrim's Progress, and I still think that Pilgrim's Progress is better than this book, but this book was still so great. I'm giving it like 9.5 out of 10. The only reason it's not a 10 out of 10 is because the pacing was very inconsistent, which I found to be really annoying. Like, it starts off really fast-paced, and then it slows down a bit, and then it speeds up, and then it's, like, normally paced for a few pages, and then it's really fast-paced again, and then it's slow-paced. So the pacing was very inconsistent, and that made it kind of annoying to read, but it still didn't tamper my enjoyment of this that much. I still loved it. It's an excellently written book, and it's 9.5 out of 10. The next one that I read, well, actually, I didn't technically read it. I listened to the audiobook on, there's this YouTube channel called Gates of Imagination, and they put forth all these free audiobooks of classics. It's amazing. And it's so amazing that the audiobooks are free as well. They've got Charles Dickens, they've got Bram Stoker, Mary Shelley, Jules Verne, H.G. Wells. They've got so many good audiobooks on there, and you can listen to them all for free. And I know there are some orcs who say that listening to audiobooks doesn't count as reading, and obviously listening and reading are two different things. That's obvious. But if you listen to the audiobook, you've still experienced the story, you've still taken in every single word of the actual book. So if you listen to the audiobook, you can say that you've read the book. It doesn't matter if it counts as reading or not. But I also had the subtitles on while I listened to it. So I did actually read it. This is The Invisible Man by H.G. Wells. Now, I've read 2 of H.G. Wells' books prior to reading this one. I read The War of the Worlds and The Time Machine, both of which were amazing. The Time Machine was better than War of the Worlds, though. The ending of The War of the Worlds was really just anticlimactic. But The Invisible Man, I really enjoyed. It was such a fascinating story. It's about this physicist who, through an experiment, manages to make himself invisible. And he just goes around the town, and once it's discovered that he is an invisible man, the police start searching for him, and he goes crazy, just causing havoc around the town and the city surrounding it. And this was such a great book. I really enjoyed listening and reading to it. And H.G. Wells is an amazing author. I want to read everything that he's written. This book was so good, so good. The plot was amazing. Characters were amazing, the prose was amazing, as it always is with H.G. Wells. H.G. Wells just comes up with the most fascinating concepts and turns them into really good stories that are excellently well written. This book is 9 out of 10. I really enjoyed it. The next one is actually a collection of short stories, and it is Famous Tales of Mystery and Horror by Edgar Allan Poe. I'm a big fan of all of Edgar Allan Poe's poems. The Raven is probably one of the greatest poems ever written, aside from some of Tolkien's poems. And I hadn't really read very many of Edgar Allan Poe's short stories prior to reading this. And I have to say, I really enjoyed them. My favorite short stories in this was The Telltale Heart and The Murders in the Rue Morgue. I have no idea how you pronounce that word. But all these short stories were so interesting. I think Edgar Allan Poe is amazing at keeping you reading and hooked throughout the story, even if they're short stories, and just his prose is really amazing. I still think that his poetry is way better than his short stories, but all his short stories are still really good, and I want to read all of them someday. I do have some more of his short stories, like, up here behind these books over here, and I do want to read them, because the short stories in this were really fascinating. There was this one short story that was a murder mystery that I think was just amazing, and it was driving me crazy not knowing who murdered the people and why they did it. The story behind who murdered the people and why they did it was so shocking to me. It was something I never would have thought, and I'm not going to spoil it because you should experience it for yourself. But yes, I recommend all of Edgar Allan Poe's short stories, although his poems are definitely better, in my opinion. But this is still a great book, and I'm giving it 9 out of 10. The next one is another collection of short stories, but it is Sherlock Holmes short stories, and it is part of this book here. And it is The Memoirs of Sherlock Holmes, a collection of about 12 or 13 short stories. I enjoyed A Study in Scarlet way more than the short stories of Sherlock Holmes, but I still think the short stories are really great as well. You have to be so creative to come up with so many mysteries and put them into short stories and so many unbelievable explanations to those mysteries. Sir Arthur Conan Doyle was such a creative person and an amazing writer, and I enjoyed all the short stories in the Memoirs of Sherlock Holmes. That last short story was crazy, and I'm not going to spoil it. But the last short story in the Memoirs of Sherlock Holmes was probably like one of the most unexpected plot twists I've ever known, ever, in any book. Fantastic. 9 out of 10. Next up is another one that I listened to on the YouTube channel called Gates of Imagination, who have all these classic audiobooks out there that are so great, and it is a rather short story by H.G. Wells called The Sea Raiders. This was a really interesting book, just a great story. H.G. Wells is amazing at crafting stories, as I said before, and this book ends with a warning. Just like The War of the Worlds and The Time Machine, how H.G. Wells puts a warning into them. All the messages in his books are so thought-provoking and really make you think. And I really enjoyed The Sea Raiders. I'm giving it 9 out of 10 as well. Next up is Fantastic Mr. Fox by Roald Dahl. This is actually a reread because I listened to the audiobook of this book very many years ago when I was so much younger, and I hardly remembered very much of this book, so I decided to pick it up and read it. An amazing story. I love all of Roald Dahl's books, and this one was no exception. It's about this one fox who steals food from these farmers, and so the farmers decide to try and kill the fox. So they come with their guns to the fox's hole and wait for him to come out, but the fox, knowing that they're there, does not come out and remains in the hole. Well, okay, I think I'm going into too much detail here, so I'm going to stop there. But this was a great story. I think Roald Dahl is an amazing storyteller. He's really great at writing characters as well. And while all these characters were kind of flat, one-dimensional characters, it was still a great story. A really delightful story as well. I read it in a Sunday afternoon and really enjoyed it. 9 out of 10. The past like 4 or 5 books on this list have been a 9 out of 10. Next up is another H.G. Wells book, which is The Door in the Wall. Again, another one that I listened to on Gates of Imagination. Fantastic channel. The Door in the Wall was a really, really interesting story. I loved the messages in it. It was so amazing. It kind of reminded me of Narnia in a way, just the vibe of it kind of felt like Narnia. And H.G. Wells' prose and dialogue is amazing, of course. I feel like I've said that already, but it's so true. And yeah, this one was very good as well. My only complaint is that at certain times it was a bit hard to follow, but still a good story with really good messages and morals that I enjoyed. 9 out of 10. And then we have Secrets of the Dragon Sanctuary. Now this is book 4 in the Fablehaven series by Brandon Mull. I've really been enjoying the Fablehaven series. I don't think it's really anything special, but it's still a really good series. And I have to say, this is undoubtedly my favorite Fablehaven book. This one had a lot of action and a lot of excitement in it, and managed to keep you reading throughout the entire thing. And it didn't take me very long to finish it either. I enjoyed every single second of it and got really lost and immersed in the story. It sets everything up with a much stronger hook than most of the other Fablehaven books do, and that hook manages to keep you through the story to the very end. And the plot twist at the end of this book was it was the last thing I ever would have expected. In fact, it's a thing I never would have thought of, ever. The plot twist was insane. Even now as I'm talking about it, I can hardly believe the plot twist at the end of this book. This is the strongest Fablehaven book. Everything is really well set up, plot is well structured, characters go through a lot of development, and in this book you can really see like the journey that the characters are going on and how they've sort of changed since the first book. This is also the book where the series really begins to widen and expand to its fullest. And this is undoubtedly the best Fablehaven book. As with the past, like, 6 books on this list, this is another 9 out of 10. Now the next one is not a 9 out of 10, it is just a bit lower. But it is 1984 by George Orwell. Now this book was really interesting. It takes place in a dystopian future, and it actually takes place in the year 1984, which at the time that George Orwell wrote this was the future. He wrote this in like the 1940s, I think. This book was such a fascinating read. The prose was amazing. The story, I think, was amazing. So it essentially takes place in a dystopian future where this one guy who everyone calls Big Brother, they're not sure if he even exists, but they call him Big Brother, and he spies on everyone, like, everywhere through these telescreens, which are set up in every single house, on every street, everywhere, and they're still sort of in a war with other countries. Or are they? It's hard to tell, because first they said, okay, so we're fighting this other country, but then later on they said, well, actually this country is our allies and we're both fighting against this other country. So, like, the government, along with Big Brother, is making all this stuff up just to keep the people in check. And you cannot go anywhere at all. Wherever you go, Big Brother is always watching through the telescreens. And he will know if you do anything illegal at all. He knows everything that there is to know about your life. Now, I have to say, this book, first of all, was amazing at predicting what's happened. Like, I'm almost not convinced that George Orwell did not travel into the future, because it is so accurate and relevant to everything going on today. How the government spies on us through our devices. The device that you're using to watch this right now, the government might be hearing you right now. And how the government, like, sort of makes up things to keep us in check, and just all this other stuff that is so fascinating and so George Orwell. I don't know how he predicted our modern world so accurately. The audiobook of this was on Gates of Imagination, the YouTube channel, and the top comment on it was, "Make 1984 fiction again." Because I don't think this book should be marketed as fiction. This is undoubtedly non-fiction. When it was first published, it was mostly fiction. But now, it is not fiction anymore, seriously. I have to say, it is a very dark and depressing read. The main character was a horrible person. All the people in this book were just horrible people with terrible morals. And it was such a bleak and depressing read. It did very well at showing the dark side of the government and society, but it didn't do anything to show us that there is still hope and that there is good in society and in the government. But other than that, it was still a great book, just really a dark and depressing story. It's so accurate to the times that we live in right now, and I'll give it 8.5 out of 10. And I remember thinking the night that I finished this book, how lucky we are that we don't live in this dystopian world. I mean, we basically already do live in this dystopian world, because 1984 is just literally everything that's going on in our world, only taken to an extreme. But I was thinking how lucky we are that it hasn't been taken to an extreme yet. How lucky we are that we can live in this America, which is still a free country. And next we have yet another book by H.G. Wells that I listened to on Gates of Imagination, which is The Empire of the Ants. This, of course, as with all H.G. Wells' books, was a fascinating story with a warning at the end. And it just really makes you think a lot. The thing with all of H.G. Wells' stories is that they're so well written, and they just really make you think. This book was no different, and I'm giving it 8 out of 10. Next is the final book in the Fablehaven series, which is Keys to the Demon Prison. Now, this is, like, by far the longest of the Fablehaven books. It's over 600 pages. And this book starts off with a strong hook, as with the fourth Fablehaven book, and manages to hook you until about the midway point where things are a bit slow-paced, but it still manages to keep you hooked and immersed in the story up until the very end. It is an amazing conclusion to the series, although the ending was just a bit anticlimactic. Like, I was expecting the ending to be way more grand, and coming to a full close, but it doesn't feel like Brandon Mull really cleared up all the loose strings of the story, but it was still a great ending to the series, and I thoroughly enjoyed it throughout. So I'm giving it 8 out of 10. Also, by the way, in the back of every Fablehaven book, it has, like, discussion questions. Like, it asks you questions about the story. What would you do in this situation? And do you think this character was right to do this? Or do you think it was right that they did this? And questions like that, which are really thought-provoking. But then I love this. The final question of this book is, who is the coolest author ever? Is it the guy who wrote Fablehaven? If not, what's the matter with you? Explain. That's brilliant. The greatest part of this book was the discussion question at the end. Amazing. 8 out of 10. Okay, we're getting close to the end. Next, I have another Roald Dahl book, which I actually read for the first time. It is The Magic Finger. This was a pretty short book, and it had really good messages. A delightful story, as with all of Roald Dahl's books, with really good messages and morals. And it was really great at the message, like, do to others as you would have them do to you, because it essentially takes these cruel people and puts them in the place of the creatures that they are mistreating, and it really makes you think, and it has a great message, and a delightful story, as with all of Roald Dahl's story, with really great and memorable characters. I'm giving this one 7.5 out of 10. And then the final one, the worst book that I read this month is The Red Pyramid by Rick Riordan. Now, this is kind of unfortunate because I read the Percy Jackson series and those books were absolutely amazing. And this is another series by the author of Percy Jackson called The Kane Chronicles. And it's kind of like Percy Jackson, only it's based off of Egyptian mythology instead of Greek mythology. But I did not enjoy this one very much. It started out promising, but it just read like a first draft to me. The prose, the dialogue, and the plot felt very clunky and just sort of messy. The characters weren't very memorable. The plot was so repetitive that I got really bored halfway through, and like it was kind of a struggle to finish it. The ending was pretty good, like it was decent, but overall this was just not a great book, which is a shame because I really enjoyed the Percy Jackson series. And I think I do want to continue on with the Kane Chronicles, but for me, this book was just not that great. It felt very messy. It read like a first draft. The plot was very repetitive, and the characters were really flat, and I didn't really care for any of them. So I'm giving this one 5 out of 10. So, those were all the books I read in this past month, ranked from best to worst. Now I will talk about 4 books that I am currently reading. The first book that I'm currently reading is The Iliad by Homer. I'm getting near to the end. I'm on chapter 17, page 442. I'm going to do a review of this book once I finish it, and so far The Iliad has been really great. I think Homer's poetry is amazing, the story is amazing, and Robert Fagles, the translator of this, I think did a really good job as well. The poetry flows very nicely, and I'm really enjoying The Iliad. It's a book that I've wanted to read for a while, and I've started several times, but I actually DNF'd it each time I finished it. But now I've gotten farther in it than I've ever gotten before, and I'm really enjoying it. The next book I'm currently reading is The Fires of Heaven by Robert Jordan. This is book 5 in the Wheel of Time, and I'm working my way slowly but surely through the Wheel of Time series. Right now I'm on chapter 33, page 481. This is an interesting read so far, but I definitely think that so far it's my least favorite Wheel of Time book. The story is just very slow-paced and it's starting to get a little confusing to me, but it's still not a terrible book. I'm still moderately enjoying it, but so far I think it's the worst Wheel of Time book yet. Not that it's a bad book, of course. It's still a pretty good book, in my opinion, but I'm not enjoying it as much as I've enjoyed the first 4 books in the Wheel of Time. Another book I'm currently reading is The Nature of Middle-earth by J.R.R. Tolkien. I'm on page 36. I'll talk about this one way more once I finish with it because, you know, I'm only 36 pages in, there's not really much to talk about yet. And I'm also reading a nonfiction book for fun, which is A Brief History of Time by Stephen Hawking. And I'm on page 174. This is a really interesting book. I'm fascinated by astronomy, although I do not agree with a lot of the stuff that Stephen Hawking is saying. Like, I'm right in the middle of this chapter that's all about the Big Bang Theory, but this is still a fascinating book with a lot of fascinating concepts in it. It's a lot more about physics in addition to astronomy, so I just found that to be very dull, and a lot of it is just going right over my head because it's super complicated. But overall, I think this is a pretty enjoyable book, although I do not agree with some of the stuff that Stephen Hawking is saying in this book. But overall, I'm moderately enjoying it. So, that is it for this video. Those are all the books I read in this past month, ranked from best to worst, and all the books I'm currently reading. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, then please hit that like button. Seriously, if you liked the video, why would you not hit the like button? It makes no sense. And if you didn't like the video, well then too bad, just turn the video off and go watch something that you actually will enjoy. But thank you so much for watching, and for now, farewell.